book because this was an interesting part that we were able to kind of move in. So the first thing that shoots out to me is I would love for anyone to just share the first thing you noticed about, maybe you were catching up. What are some things that stood out to you in the first couple of chapters while we're still on Tommy, right? Not quite part 2 with Malone, but still in those two, chapters 7 and 8. How do people feel? Did anything stand out to folks? Take your time, flip through your book if you must.
Well, Tommy's a very real character. He's upfront about his what life is for him and how he's trying to manage it. So that impressed me a lot.
Absolutely. I know something that stood out for me was when, because I think to that point, Tommy is he's a forward character, but we still, like we spoke about last week, he's young, he's 20 years old. And we kind of see him now shifting into this idea of he's an outward character that says what's on his mind, but really, really, he don't know what he's doing. And I think these last 2 chapters before we go into part 2 with Malone, we really see that. And a major name in that is like at the end of chapter 7, when the white man and I forgot the name of the white man. I know it's Robert Sudiam and another white man are talking, and they're talking about indifference. And I think the author is kind of talking to us about how like people who are not Black get to choose a sense of indifference. And Tommy says indifference would be a relief compared to this life that I live now and what I know. How do we feel about that? Indifference would be a relief. Oh, Anna? Oh, hey. Sorry, y'all. Fam's in the group chat. Fam is in the book club. Okay.
Well, when he talks about indifference, he's really saying malice is what he's feeling. And chapter 7 really brought me to a realization about white privilege and how when Howard talked about, I just told him you just told him his father's dead and he's not responding. And he's upset about the lack of emotion on the part of Tom. But on the other hand, he can talk about how he unloaded a whole, he killed the father without even walking in. Talk about white privilege. He walked into this apartment. He didn't have a search warrant. He didn't announce himself. He's not even a police officer, and he cold-bloodedly killed this guy. Not only he reloaded his gun to kill him, and he's worried that Tom doesn't have any emotion. So it's that's malice, and that is to me that white privilege of projecting feelings that you really don't own. You're not owning your own feelings. And that upset me. That really did. And the whole idea of that Tom wasn't expressing his feelings, that's the whole tradition of slavery. You couldn't express your feelings because you'd be lynched in a minute if you objected, if you said anything, if you expressed your emotions. So it was that out of the whole book so far, this was the most impactful chapter to me, because without saying it, this brought out to me, this is what white privilege is, malice.
Evelyn, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Or I feel like what Evelyn was saying, like there's no awareness of like how stupid you can be. You know what I'm saying? Like you hear the stuff that they say and you're like, what do you mean? But I guess maybe they call that what is it, cognitive dissonance? Like you can always distance yourself away from something by rationalizing it or whatever the case may be. But, that just amazed me, like how he even, felt comfortable enough to say, well, what's your reaction to that?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know, you guys had, I have the audio. So the narrator does such a good job in like portraying how the characters sound. It's like, Well, we just told you your father was shot. I mean, do you have, what are your thoughts on that? It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what was interesting about that scene also is the way that character, I think his name was Otis. I was confused as to whether he was he was just the perpetrator or he was also a police officer.
You talking about Mr. Otis is the dad. You talking about Mr. Howard?
Right, the guy who kills Mr. Otis. I'm sorry.
Mr. Howard. Yeah.
Yeah, because going back to what Evelyn says, he states it so matter of factly that he unloaded his revolver, which is 5 or 6 bullets. He reloaded his revolver, and then he emptied it again. So now he shot someone a potential of 10 to 12 times, and it feels like he is just stating this in the same way that we're having this conversation, just plainly, that's how it is. Don't get upset, anybody. I had to kill a black man.
Right. And to connect, that's a brilliant point, Ron, because then going back to what Evelyn is saying and Vatasha mentioned too about that sense of privilege or that sense of just getting to move on with your life is in fact a malicious sense of difference. And that's why I think Tommy is saying to feel that way would be a relief as opposed to all the feelings that I carry, and what that looks like. And naming that maybe Tommy doesn't even know how to say that, And I agree, Evelyn, that this is the part of the book where we feel a shift. Is that fair to say? Like things where we were curious and now we're like concerned. You know what I mean? What else, folks? What else stands out?
But look at all of the. Oh, go ahead.
I make it quick. There's also a flip in the sense that the father was more concerned about Tommy getting back home versus the fact that he's now dead. I mean, the concern was always for Tommy. So you don't, as a reader, you don't see this death coming,
Absolutely.
That's it.
But look at all of the police that have killed, our people. Do they feel anything? I mean, and they just go on, go back to their jobs, go back to life, and I wonder if there's a feeling there, really, that
Right.
they've killed another human being, who, whether the person is guilty or not, doesn't matter. It's another human being, And when regarding Tommy, I think it was Maya Angelou. There's a poem, "I Wear the Mask," and that's very important. That we can, we have been afraid of showing our real feelings to the outside, maybe to inside. Inside our communities, that's different. But to outside, because it's very dangerous to, put yourself there, out, you're bare. And what can somebody do if you show your feelings,
Yeah,
Yes.
and Tommy already has a kind of he's already wearing the mask. His choice of clothing, even his choice of profession as a guitarist is a mask. So they're there's a kind of underlying, I want to say, blues in this particular horror novel. There is a kind of blues, the survival. I'm not sure I'm going to make it back home if I go out to Flatbush or to Long Island. There's a kind of underlying riff that repeats. That's all I got.
Right.
I'm sorry. Have y'all heard the article, or it's been a big discussion about how they found the Kentucky Sheriff's Department and what was written in the training manual. Some high school kids came upon it because their dad was a lawyer and it had nothing to do with what he was doing, but they found that a manual for Kentucky's Sheriff Department had quotes from Hitler and Robert E. Lee in them. And part of the verbiage was saying, and I'm thinking about what Hugo was saying when she was talking about, like, you know, what are you thinking about as a police officer? Do you care? And they, in the training manual, you know how we think like, oh, okay, we've been told their whole job has been to protect and serve. But in the manual, it says that us citizens are to be looked at as enemies. We are to be looked at as enemies. We are to be looked at as if, you know, basically you think about cowboys and Indians, good guys and bad guys, all of these different things. Like when they interact with us, that's what they've been trained and taught, as if they're in the battlefield, or if they're in the war zone, which makes total sense now when you think about it. Like, if, you know, when you think of enemy, you think of destroy whatever that is against me. Even if they've done nothing to me, it's against me, you know. But yeah, that was just shocking. And there were some high school kids that blew the whistle.
Well, in New York, I think it was in New York, the police trainees, when they would be training to shoot their guns, they have these things that come up, for them to shoot, and they were Black people. So, I mean,
Yep, as many folks are mentioning, especially in the group chat, we already know that policing goes back to slavery. And I think that the idea of being in battle with enemy is also a very like Western, white, patriarchal, colonized idea. Like even our definition of enemy itself is not executed the same ways in other countries. People go to war, have enemy, whatever that looks like, and those definitions don't resonate in the ways that they do here. And I think it's important we acknowledge that, because there's also Black people in those spaces, right? Which let's talk about our superpowers for a second. I promise it connects to the book for a second. In this idea that we in Black body, right, have acquired a sense of superpower during this great solstice, and then we talk about these sentiments of like how malicious it is for police forces and other people to feel indifference, right? I think part of why this superpower thing came to be really, really funny, besides all of the other things that we've experienced as a community, is that I think the idea of superpower is, if it were up to you, what are the things that you would do to combat that sense of indifference, right? So I'm curious, what are y'all superpowers? Or if you haven't thought about it, what are the things that you use in your body, in your person, to combat that sense of indifference that we see our main character, Tommy? We're not sure, but we think he's about to go all the way into the deep end with it, right? What are we thinking? Kleaver, you said you changed since yesterday. What are yours? Hi, Kleaver. What are your superpowers toward indifference?
I am now officially Storm. That's no longer a real thing. It's me. Thank you so much.
What did you say? He's stoned?
Yeah. Storm from X-Men.
What else is new?
You wanted to be here, but it became me. Love her.
Got it. Are there any ways in which you use that toward indifference? It's sort of the theme we're talking about here with Tommy's character, and what we face with white people or white culture, in that like indifference is used as a tool to continue to commit harm to us. Kleaver?
Yeah, let me just think on that for a second.
Okay,
really
thank you.
Too
Anybody
stoned.
else? Anna, what you gotta say? Anybody else?
I didn't read it. I just wanted to get in. I just came for the Bacardi.
Hey. Anna's known me since I was a little kid, y'all. So this is cool.
Yeah, Ron.
Ron, anyone else? I think this is a real interesting concept when we talk about sort of where our character's going into the book.
My superpower would be putting them mentally and emotionally in our shoes. To imagine their son their daughter, their wife, their husband killed.
Somebody sound like Tommy Tester. Nah, that's very, very good. Excellent. Anyone else?
Yeah, I saw where people were saying, like, someone was saying they would travel back in time and get the lady who lied on Emmett Till, and it was like a little clip of this little old lady getting like blown away. I was like, oh, this is so horrible to laugh at that, but I get it. Like, you know, that would be amazing to go back and right the wrongs of, you know, anytime, you know, people have been lied on or, you know, had some kind of injustice, which, I mean, boy, what a job that would be. But there would be no rest for the weary. But yeah, time travel would be good. And an assassin. There you go.
You know,
Right.
Altadena is where Octavia Butler was born and raised. So that's all she writes about is trying to go, you know, one of her novels is exactly about going back to time, trying to figure out what happened. Or I forgot the name of the book.
Definitely. Ron, I know you got it. What is yours? I know you got one.
I would like to speak every language.
Word.
Talk about it, Ron. Tell us more. Tell us
That
why.
would be my superpower. If I could understand what everyone is saying to me or saying around me. Not so much that I want to eavesdrop on anyone, but I do think language is obviously a natural barrier to us as humans connecting. And I don't know if I would be like the United Nations, super United Nations, but if we took language more serious in all aspects of what we do, I think we would be a better society.
Thank you, Ron. I love that. And literally when we talk about like feeling something for other people as opposed to a sense of difference, that's it, right? Like learning how they're saying it. All right, I'm gonna take two more folks with superpowers and then we can move on. But I hope you continue to think about this, right? And like how we combat sort of the indifference that we face day to day in Black body and everyday life. Hey, baby Journey.
That's Journey. She's the youngest member. She read the book already.
Yes.
And she is like, yo.
Hi.
I read the book, but I don't want to talk about it tonight. Because I got this, I'm chewing on this thing and it's better than the book.
Don't chew on the book though. Hi.
Hi, what a beautiful baby. Kleaver, I'll revisit you. Do you know what your superpowers were?
I was not being funny about Storm, but now I'm really thinking seriously, how does that apply to your question? Because that is a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I always liked Storm because it felt like she was able to be present to the elements and be in harmony and control of it, like to wield it, that's the word. She was able to be present to natural forces and wield it in her favor. Something around that, like something about connecting to nature as a way to address what you're talking about.
I love that. Absolutely. Especially when we think about folks, and again, this takes place in a Black body in Harlem, 1921, New York City. We think about the disconnect of land. That's why we have land acknowledgement at the beginning of book club, of our bodies to the actual land and how to use that. Okay, Kleaver, heard you, saw you.
You know what we do.
Yeah. I know that for me, I don't know necessarily what the superpower would be, but I definitely relate to our main. I don't even know if Tommy's our main character anymore, so maybe I shouldn't say that, but I definitely relate to Tommy's sentiments of going through whatever you're going through for survival, putting on those masks, as someone had mentioned earlier, and then kind of being at a point where like, well, you know what? Oh, baby Journey's here, I won't curse. Well, you know what? F it. If you don't have a sense of or feeling, neither do I, right? And sort of teetering and tottering between that supervillain, superhero space. So I definitely relate to Tommy. Has anyone else been at that stage, or when you read these parts about him shifting, can you relate?
Yeah, I can. It just increases my anger. You know, I'm an angry Black woman, and I'm proud of that because I mean, you know, they have always, talked against angry Black women, but I am, and I think we have a lot to be angry about. You know, I mean, if I'm not just sitting here with my anger, I try to do things positive for my community, for our people. You know, and so, but you know, I'm angry as hell.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Journey. Said hell.
Not only is she our youngest book club member, but she's our OG. So she's okay.
Look what we're about to go deal with right now. Look what she did to me.
Oh my God. Why it gotta be that color though?
So
We ain't smelling it. Don't worry about it.
you're right. Johnson, I really do appreciate that understanding and that proclamation, particularly when we look at people, you know, we look at folks like Audre Lorde, been telling us for a while already that our anger is the useful tool and it'll get us to our second place. Octavia Butler as well, right? Some of her sci-fi elements are connected sort of to that anger that we feel, right? And how that can be the power. So I really do appreciate that. It sounds like anger can be part of the superpower. Uh-oh, am I dragging?
Yeah, right.
No, I think that's right.
Oh my goodness.
Harness it though.
And that's where you see Tommy shift. He's takes that anger and now he's you don't know if he's the villain, he becomes the villain, or he becomes the hero, because he's working on he's working with, as you read through the next chapters, he's working with Suriam. But on the other hand, you know, he's got another agenda going on there. He's just playing along, you know, and when Suriam says, you know, I'll be Caesar and you be Octavia, that was it for me. I says, oh, he's got his knife, you know, he's getting ready. So that to me was where the switch happened.
Absolutely.
And I knew that Tom had another plan.
Right, because also, and prior to that part, I think Suriam the night before calls him an ape to his face. You know, he starts talking to him real disrespectfully. So Evelyn, thank you. That's kind of to the point we were trying to make earlier. This indifference, this evil, this malice, this sense of not caring creates a shift and a change in Tommy and a change in our book, right? Yeah. And let's move into Malone. Let's talk about Malone. What's up with that guy? What's up with Malone? How are we feeling about his presence in the book and his support to the story?
He was kind of reminding me of, you know, when there's white people who think they're exceptional in a certain way, like, oh, I'm the good white guy or that type. Like when they talked about how he didn't really socialize with other cops because he didn't, like they didn't let him in, but also he felt different from them. And he took pride in being the only white guy being able to walk around Red Hook and that type of thing. It just reminded me of that, those like white people that think they're special because they connect with people of color in a certain way, as if we don't really see them, because that also gets described like they know he's a cop and they're moving around in a certain way, but conscious of him being a cop and that type of thing. I found that, yeah, I don't know. I was gonna say interesting, but that's just a killer word. I don't know if it's interesting, but that's what was coming up reading his character.
There is that weird scene where he's sort of peering into the window and two other cops come along and grab him and start beating on him, and he doesn't state he's a police officer. They have to discover his gun and his badge, which I thought was kind of weird. Like if you're a cop and other cops come and beat on you, the first thing you're gonna do is probably identify yourself, you know, as such. And that just felt weird. But maybe that was the writer's attempt to make Malone sort of human, quote unquote, human, and not just a cop that has, that as many police officers believe they have, as like a superpower. You know, he's just a guy looking in a window and some other cops come and sort of drag him a bit.
And not only that, I'm sorry. Not only that, but during that exchange with the other two cops, like he shrugs it off. He's like, oh, you know, I'm not worried about that because I'm too busy trying to look in this window. And I'm just like, you know, when you said that, Ron, about like, you know, we think maybe that's how cops are. Well, I'm thinking, is that really how cops are? Like, you know, I would think, okay, if there were another white guy, and let's say he's, I don't know, you know, he's doing something that looks suspicious or whatever, and the other people who happen to be cops don't know that he's a cop as well. Like, would you really shrug that off, or would you feel some kind of way about, oh, so this is what you guys do, or do you already know that's the case? So like, let me just shrug it off. And I think about that when I think about Black cops. Like, you know that if you did not have that badge and did not, you know, wear it on your person at all times, you know, letting people know that you are a cop. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on now, like, let's be real about this. So this elitism, this godlike complex, like, y'all could never really wear that because you of all people would know. You would be the first one to go if you did not have, you know, that as a title.
Especially in 1921, right? Let's think about like the time of the book and even what that looks like. And I wanted to name, sort of connecting the 3 points together, that I thought when I was reading it, that as that was happening to Malone, I kind of had the idea that simultaneously somewhere, Tester and Sudiam are doing some sort of magic or whatever. I don't know. I still don't know. And I finished the book. Like, I still don't know. I believe it to be magic, but we're not sure what form. But they're doing some sort of incantation or some sort of magic to kind of shift the realities. And that's why I sort of understood that Malone didn't bother to be like, hey, I'm a cop, or, yo, stop hitting me, or whatever it was, because I kind of felt like there was a sense that he couldn't, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It kind of felt like that sort of otherworldly, supernatural thing was happening, because it did seem out of place, especially after we're describing this long scene that Kleaver mentioned, where we see how this white cop sees himself in the neighborhood, you know? And Vatasha, I know you're asking, like, is that how they see it? But I think that's what the author is naming. Like, this is actually the perspective of how a white cop who's patrolling or looking for something is comfortable in relationship to the community around him, right? Like, he's like, yo, nobody notices me. I'm out here checking, taking notes. People acknowledge me because I'm a cop. But that's, you know, we kind of see him in the beginnings of that entitlement that you named, or like that God complex. And then in that moment where it matters, like Ron is saying, he's getting grabbed, he's getting beat up, he can't. So I took it to be like supernatural. What y'all think?
Floating head emoji.
What does that
Oh,
mean?
I'm psyched. I'm gonna read the book.
And there's also, he's looking in the window because he's looking for, and I still don't know how you pronounce it. I'm listening to the ebook, Sudiam, but he's looking through the window. Then the cops sort of roused him. And then all of a sudden, when he looks back, the scene has changed also. So there's some kind of magic happening as this whole scene is going on, you know. There was a chair there, not a chair is gone, I believe.
And the figure in the chair was gone too.
Yeah.
That's what he said, yeah. Not only was the figure in the chair gone, but the chair had disappeared too.
Yeah.
Right. And prior to that part, I actually thought that maybe that was the Sleeping King, because we skipped over that. But, you know, we hear about the Sleeping King in chapter 7 and 8. So when that figure is like showing up and mysterious, I'm like, oh, there's got to be some Sleeping King magic. I don't know what's going on. But I still don't really know, or again, I finished the book and I still don't get the part about the Sleeping King, but we're gonna keep going. Maybe.
Well, he could be a merman.
He could be a what, Jacqueline?
A merman.
Talk about that.
I don't have nothing to say. Just the guy with fins and a tail.
So you know what it is? Water, fins. Could be a merman. What about that Conjuring song? you know, they'll smile in your face and laugh you down. You know, that I made up
All
a
I
tune
thought
that
was the OJs. I thought the OJs, you know, backstabber. That's okay. Every time I read that, the OJs came to my head.
yes.
For those young people, you know, the OJ, the backstabber. Ron, you know the
yeah.
song. Please
I know
help
the
me out
song.
here.
Are you about to play it? No.
I'm not gonna sing it though.
Sing
They
for
smile in your face. Everyone wants to take your place. The backstabbers. So
Yeah.
that
Very,
was it.
very similar lyrics, right?
They smile in your face.
Right.
Time want to take your place.
That's
That's it.
these guys are too young.
I'm laughing because I'm like, oh no, look at us exposed. But then I just remembered I'm 109. Y'all not talking about me.
Oh, we love the OJs. The OJs are everything.
I was
OJs,
about to say
yeah.
that's my jam.
Listen. So then even in that understanding, right? Understanding that like the author would choose something in a similar tone or in a similar cadence to that song from the OJs. And this song naming that the idea of conjure music is really our music, right? Our people's music. Whatever people sang to get through the next thing. So I thought that was really awesome and really cool.
I thought it was important too that, to your point, Paula, is that he learned it from his family, that song. That was his mother. Wasn't it his mother and his father that time?
Yes.
Or like people in a line of have it learned that song. That, to your point, that does lean to that of like, this is something that we're taught, the culture of it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Well, the point of the OJ song has to do with, you know, your friends can pose a greater danger than your enemies. So here he is with Soydam, who's, you know, taking him on like the mentor. I'm taking on the student, and Tom is already got it in his mind. No, you pose a danger to me. But I'm gonna ride this till the end, and we'll see who will be the victor here. But the whole point is that you can't trust your friends.
Yep, and we see that once he has that disconnect of losing his father and getting really, really close to Robert Studiam, we see that there's danger in that, right, Evelyn? Like this idea. And maybe that's also why he's using that song, because it's like this song is literally warning me against the things that I'm doing. Right? So I love that.
Protection. It's an incantation for him. It's his incantation that was given to him by his father. And I thought all along that his father knew what was coming down. His father had that. I don't know whether his father realized he was going to die, but I think his father knew the danger that his son was going to, you know, was opening the door to. And which is why he gave him the knife. So,
and with such a large amount of money, right? Like dad must have known, like, oh, okay, like this is something you may not come back from, and I need you to come back to me. That really broke my heart, y'all, when that happened, because I was just like, that is how it happened. And then the obvious kind of drawn in connection to Breonna Taylor. Again, I think it's important to name that the author, whether it's perfect timing because of the timing that we're in, the author is kind of like spot on in some of these individualized incidences that are happening with Tommy before the shift, right? Before he leans into something else. And I don't know if y'all noticed that or if you feel some way. Look at Journey, like, girl, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, I don't know if y'all noticed that or if you feel some type of way about that. But I wanted to ask you about Studiam. Now I don't know how to say it wrong. I wanted to ask you about Studiam. Because he goes from this, like, we know he's like some sort of rich old man, right? Last week we were talking about this like mystery around him. This week we realized that he won in the courts, right? That his family doesn't get any sort of ownership to his estate and his property. And by the end of our reading, the specific allotted time that we were supposed to read for, Studiam has taken over that part of Red Hook. Is it Red Hook or Queens? Remind me.
Red Hook.
Red Hook. He's taken over that part of Red Hook. People everywhere are chanting his name. Creepy, weird stuff. What are we thinking? What do we think's going on?
Well, the idea of like the white savior is really coming through heavily here. The fact that Sodium's gathering all these black and brown immigrants from around the city, and he is saying he's going to give them dominion over the world once they carry through with whatever rituals that he has planned. But the point being, it needs to be on his terms, which is why, you know, he refers to Tester as an ape when he's reaching for the door to leave. It's like, no, you need to play by his terms, because if you want liberation, it's not going to be through yourselves. It's going to be through me. And that's really where the white savior complex is really coming through there. And once again, as looking for names here, Evelyn pointed out too before, it's the idea of the ones that are nicest to you or posing as the friends are the ones you need to be most wary of. And Sodium's carrying that heavily, that vibe.
Absolutely. And as we know, we understand, operating sort of in that level of whiteness is dangerous, right? For any black body that is in that. So we know somehow, some way, even though Sodium is set up, Greg, that was a great point. Sodium is sort of set up to help. He's the danger, period. And like, we're in that. That's awesome.
And it wasn't just a racist against, you know, people of color. It was the xenophobia. It was anybody who wasn't, you know, from this country. The focus in Red Hook is because it's filled with all these illegal aliens, and they weren't, you know, necessarily people of color. They were just people that weren't supposed to be here, that didn't come in through the proper channels, and these are the people that he was going to save, that they were going to take over the world, that they were going to control the power, they were going to have the power, when it wasn't them at all. They were just going to be his minions, and he was going to be the power.
And how do we, that's a great point. How do we feel about, I know I felt some type of way. I wonder how y'all felt. Let me not project. About like that sentiment that those Black and non-white people who were in that sort of group were named as like the criminals, right? Like, oh, here are like the 50 baddest of the bad. Like, they're so bad, they're so dangerous. I kind of am in this sense of like, oh, wow, this story is really dependent on like the black and brown body choosing not good, if that makes sense. I wonder how y'all feel, or if that came up for anyone.
Can you say
Kind
more?
of.
I can't say more, but Barbara, were you gonna say something real quick? No?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, in previous chapters, I thought Suleiman was very mysterious. Like, I didn't really quite have an opinion about him yet. Wasn't sure if I liked him or not. I believe that Miss Johnson last week said something against him, not really liking him. I think I agree at this point with her, because I believe that what Greg said about this, like, I don't know, how he's like this powerful, I think he kind of chose these people, these immigrants or Black people, whoever, because that made him feel on top of the world. It made him feel that much superior, because he felt like he was addressing not educated people. So, and he even said it in a few chapters before, chapter 9, he calls them goons. So he's just saying like, oh, I just didn't like his character at this point, because then it really shows up that, wow, I don't think he has power, because he can't have power within his own people. He can only have power with other people, not of his class.
So maybe he's not as powerful as we're being set up to understand.
That's the way I feel. I feel like you have to go to people that you feel are beneath you in order to have the power.
But he does have this sort of mystical power. Like, his power is not political power. It seems to be as much magical power, you know? And you would think like magical power would magical power wouldn't be racist. Magical power would transcend race.
Right, you would think.
You would
But I
think.
guess that's to Barbara's point, though, right? Naming what you just named, Ron, that's a really, really important tie, actually, because we're kind of then seeing if this power is this magic is supposed to be transcendent, I think is what you're naming, right? Like via race, gender, whatever sort of understandings of sexuality or body that we exist in. This power transcends all of that. And I think to Barbara's point is that you can't be in power of transcendence if you're still on this superiority, hierarchy, sense of compartmentalizing people, holding people in a higher account or a lesser account. How good are your powers? Most likely trash. Barbara didn't say all that, but I think that's the point there. How do y'all feel? Agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I think that's supported by the very fact that he has to run by Tester and Tommy what he's going to say before the night comes. If anything, that's showing weak character traits in his point that he doesn't really have the self-confidence or the charisma to really pull it off. So it's like, oh, Tommy, you need to come here this night, and I'm going to run through what I'm going to say. And when Tommy interrupts, he gets very out of sorts. All right, so the idea is he's not 100% confident in his own powers, and I'm not denying he's got the mystical powers in addition to the wealth and the race status that's afforded to him, but he's clearly feeling insecure in other ways in terms of actually acting it out and holding sway over this group of people.
Right. That's awesome, Greg. Again, to the point of like, you're supposed to be this super strong, superior being, and you're getting rattled very easily from the looks of it over here, you know? So that's great. How do y'all feel about that?
Yeah.
He's kind of, but you know, he to me, he's a person that can invoke or open a door or a gate, a mystical door or gate, but he doesn't have any real control over the outcomes or whoever shows up at the gate. He kind of, you know, read like the first 50 pages of the manual, but he doesn't have any control over who or whatever shows up.
Absolutely.
He reminds me of let's go back to Lovecraft Country. He reminds me of, is her name Christina, the wizards or the old guy?
No, it is, baby. You know her name, Christina. That's
yeah,
exactly.
I don't know how. Yeah, but that's who she reminds me of. Like, you know, remember where she really didn't have a dog in the fight when it came to like racism, and you know, I didn't, because when she was like, I don't really care about Emmett Till because Ruby was so upset about Emmett Till dying, and that was a big thing, you know, and it took me a minute to realize like the little boy who had passed away, who was baby girl's friend, was Emmett Till, because they called him something else.
Bobo.
Yeah, or something like that. And so it took me a minute. And so when Ruby's upset, you know, because Christina's her lover, and shouldn't you be upset? Oh, that's above me. I really don't care one way or another. And to me, that's what that feels like. So it's like, whether it's Lovecraft Country or this one here, you know, unfortunately, the Black people have the you know, they don't have the luxury of like removing themselves, like, and being able to apply magic and thinking like that's gonna be the end all be all and solve all their issues, you know. Whereas whatever his name is, the elitist, you know, he gets to, like, that's only his concern. He's only mildly curious about the fate of, you know, these minority people. But yeah, that's listening to this and him even being off, you know what I'm saying? The fact that Tom could throw him off as he's doing this incantation or whatever just lets me know, like, okay, yeah, you clearly don't have all the answers, because Tom's just over here playing. Now, mind you, he's going through his own thing, you know, dealing with his dad's death, but like, it would take Tom to break you out of the spell of what you were doing. Like, that's ridiculous. Yeah.
Right. And then you still have such a strong sense of indifference. Again, I see Greg put in the chat, The Wizard of Oz, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It all goes back to this notion, right, of like, how superior or how strong can the idea of you not caring enough or not having a sense of humanity in someone else, how strong can that really take you? And I think our author is putting us on that journey. How far can any of them get, right, with that sense of indifference that they're encountering? I'm mad inspired. Like, I'm about to write a science fiction novel.
I don't know if this is, you know, out left field, but I just thought came to me that maybe the father sacrificed himself so Tommy could get himself together, you know, so Tommy could be stronger and Tommy could realize his own power. because he is going to.
I love that.
But I don't know. I'm just saying, it just came to me.
No, that's a great prediction. But I also, because that power and that sacrifice is tied to so much violence, particularly in the name of whiteness, I wonder if Otis really wanted that kind of power for his son. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then to realize what the world was like, that what those white people around him at that particular time in 1920, whatever, in Harlem, or in New York, wherever, that's what they were like, you know. And you know, so I don't know. I was just thinking that, because why was he killed like that, you know? And you know, I know he was you know, weak and an invalid and all like that, but I also feel that somehow he manipulated it, or he allowed it, so that Tommy can get his head together and see the reality of where he was and what he needs to do. But I don't know.
And we got to remember, he was also still a very young guy. It was like 40, 41.
His father, yes.
Which just seems unbelievable, the way he's being portrayed as like an older, you think he's an older guy, but you know, 41 is still relatively young.
Right.
Exactly.
I think he
back then, wasn't that considered old way back then?
Yes.
Old.
Yeah.
We definitely spoke about that, I think, before, right? Talking about how it's great to set up these complexities of age and understanding that 40 years old in a Black body in 1921 may feel ancient, and even to be 20 years old in a Black body, maybe we're perpetuating the idea of like being 20 and being grown enough to know what you're doing when you really don't, right? We've all been 20, except for Journey. And none of us, I didn't know y'all, I don't mean to disrespect you, but none of us knew what we were doing at 20.
Right.
And it's safe to assume that in this heightened, emphasized sense of adulthood and manhood that Tommy has to live in Harlem in 1921, that he may be in over his head, right? From the minute we meet him, even though we see him change and be shifts, even in his power, maybe he's in over his head. You know, we don't quite know yet.
Didn't his father know that when he saw the page that he had too? Didn't his father know that?
Did his father know what?
No, when he had the last page of that book or whatever was written on that page.
The father was illiterate, and that's why Tommy gave him the task of tearing out the page, because then he wouldn't be contaminated or poisoned, or the toxicity of those words would not affect Otis because he couldn't read. So that didn't happen. But I want to go back to the notion of Soydam in terms of he was an amateur. He was an amateur magician. He really didn't know what he was doing. The whole notion that Greg said about, you know, having to practice the speech and all that, the real threat here was Ma'at. She knew her stuff, the woman who wanted the book in the first place. And she definitely had a sense of the power of what the supreme alphabet would bring. He only thought, Soydam thought that he knew, but he needed a henchman to fulfill that. And I think that that's why he picked Tom. He saw something in Tom that that Tom had this innate power, this psychic ability that Soydam did not have. He may have been able to lead it, but he wouldn't be able to fulfill all the incantations or the part. He didn't have that in himself. He was an amateur. He didn't, you know, he was just going, I go by that white privilege. Just because he was white, he figured he can, and all these, you know, other people, these foreigners he would be able to control them just through his sense of white privilege. But he really didn't know what he was doing.
And even I think the sorceress didn't either, because she had to go and get somebody to also get the book from her, and she didn't know that language because she noticed that the last page was missing. So surely there was some power and there was some knowledge that she didn't have. And what's interesting about all of that is that both of them had to go and reach out to a minority for that information. Like, I mean, I don't know. I haven't read far enough to figure out where did he get the book from. I'm still curious about that. Where did he get the book from? Why would he know where to get the book from? Why did he have the sense to get the book? You know what I'm saying? And be able to get it and provide it to them. And also, too, how do we know that that page that the father kept wasn't part of his death?
And I'm gonna name that the book is so small that we might not know any of those things by the time. You know what I mean? Like that's an even greater point. Like, oh, I love what you're saying. Keep going.
Oh yeah, but that's it. So yeah, I'm just like I think it's the usual. I hate to say it, the magical Negro trope, because that's what it seems like to me. You know what I'm saying? He's the guy who has all the answers, even though he doesn't know the answers. You know, they're inside of him, and everybody's grasping at this, trying to get to him, including Malone and Cuckoo Bird Cop and all of these other different things. So yeah.
And I feel that sentiment too, but you know, usually in the magic Negro sort of narrative, we see some sense or some semblance of like humility or positivity even in this Black person that's navigating the magic, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. I mean, look at Atticus, right? He's so fine, but look at him. I'm gonna cry every single time I have to use magic. Like that idea of being so conflicted and still very present, but still very much in things that are unknown. We see that often in the magical Negro trope. And what I want to name, the sense that I had in reading this, is particularly in those chapters before we dip into the, you know, off into the last bit next week, is that I don't think Tom is going to move in a way that is any semblance of a thing of humility or positivity. I think we see our character Tom changing, shifting, maybe to the point of no return. So it's not even a sense of having access to these powers within him that Ma'at and Suryam are trying to understand or attain. But I think he's like, whatever happens, I'm gonna finish my agenda. And having that sense of agenda, for me, foreshadows a little bit of evil, something in our character that's just not right, not who he started off as, you know? And I want to name that he's having all these adventures, and every place we only see him in Harlem in a certain specific amount of time, right? So what do we think about that? Even the placement of where we access magic versus where we're at. Like he's only in Harlem a certain amount of time, and a lot of the wild things that happen to him and the things that shift him don't happen in Harlem. And what do we think about that notion? That bothered me a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. Because why does his access of power and magic have to happen through this like evil demonic way? Why is it that we as Black people constantly, when faced with the idea of accessing our magic, have to make a choice between, you know, like good or evil? I mean, because that's what makes good science fiction maybe, but I think us as Black people, we're always being pushed into that question, even in a common day consciousness. When you think about how we deal with Black trans death, how we deal with the death of Breonna Taylor, how we deal with the death of a child like Trayvon Martin, we understand, right, that it's always in choice. We have a choice to make. And I think that narrative is being pushed deeply right now in the science fiction.
Okay, so I had to say this real quick, and then I'll hush. So I think
Never
back
hush.
in the day, you know, when I think about root work and like our ancestors, how they were able to merge the two. You know what I'm saying? They were able to say that, okay, you know, if I'm doing chicken bones or whatever, you know, or if I'm casting love spells or whatever, I can also go to church on Sunday. And, you know, if you know anything about Louisiana, you can have a card reader's lady's house be right next door to the church house, you know what I'm saying? And kind of get used to that. And I think we, over time, had this thing of separation. Of course, colonization, slavery, and all that stuff has a lot to do with it. But also, too, I think there's a thing, because now there's like this generation, they've probably never gone anywhere, but like, if you have that kind of notion to be open to maybe not everything, but some things, you know what I'm saying? You can be aware that, like, what do they call it? Shadow work. You can hold on to that shadow work and be able to embrace your darkness as well as your light. And so I see a lot of people talking about, you know, the black witches and all that stuff, how they're saying like, if I want to hex you and, you know, and be okay with that, I'm okay with that. And I can still be kind and loving, but I want you destroyed. So I get it. I don't think that's necessarily evil.
Right. But what I'm saying is that we don't get to be in that in-between space you're naming. And oftentimes in media, we gotta pick one. And we have to lean into either a sense of vengeance or lean into like some sort of personal mission of agenda of kindness. Remember, I told y'all last time, I'm a nerd. I watch a lot of plot theory, a lot of Black science fiction.
Oh, I'm thinking of Darth Vader, you know.
Talk to me.
Yeah. In which, you know, you have to go to the dark side. And it's that sense of vengeance that motivates someone to go to the dark side. And it's justified in their mind. So is Tom now, you know, to me, Tom is on a mission of vengeance. He's going to get revenge for the death of his father. Mm-hmm. And how he got to that point, he can't see his role in that he's really, in many ways, Howard and Malone told him, you know, it's your fault that your father's dead. And he rejected that right away. How could that be? But I think that that's going to have something, that notion is going to have something to do in the last couple of chapters, where I think, you know, I haven't read the end, so I don't know, but I think that he's going to get revenge, and it's not going to end very nicely for him either, because I think he has accepted the guilt of his role in his father's death.
Right. Vengeance in itself is a very, very difficult and dangerous thing, right? Like, it's not, no one has the agenda of vengeance and is at complete calm with that choice. Like, anytime you choose vengeance, you're also choosing a sense of danger. And I think that that's a really, really great point to make, in that we don't really know what Tommy's sense of vengeance is going to do to him. And that's why I posed the question to you as Black, brown people in the room, that notion or that understanding of choosing vengeance, like even in our powers and all that, there's always this sense of like, I can, because of my violent history or the violent past in which I come from, I can choose to be vengeful, or I can choose to move on. And I wonder, sort of, as I read these chapters, is our author sort of in a trope? You know, I don't know.
But I think we as people are in a trope, because I don't think there's anything wrong with vengeance. I mean, if somebody comes and hurts my child, I'm going to try to take them out, tell you the truth. But the thing is, as a so-called minority in this country, I mean, like, you know, like when I have so many things in my head, and I'm trying to say, but like with the Panthers and the Young Lords and other groups who were defending ourselves, and they were taken out, you know, because we are a minority in this country. So we don't have the armament, we don't have anything in order to even defend ourselves, you know, much less do vengeance, you know. And I mean, it would be nice if we could just say, I forgive you. But, you know, that doesn't work, because, I mean, you know, what choice do we have? Okay, there's either vengeance on one side, and the other side is, oh, well, that's the way it is. And what, so, I mean, so we elect these people so that they will try to decrease the amount of harm that's done to us. I mean, I really don't have the answer. I mean, I don't know what we really can do to stop the hurt and stop the pain, stop the killing. You know, I really don't know.
Right.
And I mean, at one time, when I was younger, There was somebody was suggesting that the police who kill, hurt our people, that they made posters of them and put them up there on buildings and said this guy is an evil guy, but that never took place. So I don't know.
No, I think that's an amazing.
I mean, magic is fine, but we don't have magic.
Or maybe we do, Miss Johnson, because we have I'm trying to tell you this whole time, we got superpowers. But no, Miss Johnson, that's a brilliant point. I want to just ask you, not to put you on the spot at all, because I don't have the power to do that. But to ask you, even what you've shared, which is a brilliant point and notion toward that, because what I understand you saying is vengeance can be righteous. And you know what? Let's name that. That is absolutely true, absolutely real. Honoring what we said earlier about Audre Lorde and using anger as the tool for revolutionary practice and purpose, right? All those things are more than real and true. And I will name the first kind of statement that was made. That was like, if someone hurts my child, I'm coming for them. How many of us feel that way? Let's just take a cold, quick temperature in the room. You feel that way? Thumbs up. Look, Journey's like, yes, my mama feel that way.
Yeah.
If you don't have children, family members, community, if somebody come for your people, you feel like, it's like, okay, if I have to, I'm gonna do that, and that feels right. But I want to name for us is that even in that righteous choice, there's a shift. We change.
Yeah, of course.
Different. We may not necessarily some of us become stronger. Some of us, maybe it's not always strength, right? So what I'm naming is that in our practices of vengeance and in our practices of trying to take what we've done and make it right, we have to name that there's a love and a care that we have to do within ourselves as Black people, because vengeance itself changes you. And this is, again, I know I'm young, but I'm 109. And as someone who's experienced whatever little bit of life I've experienced and having to navigate my own sense of vengeance in my Black woman body, whatever that looks like, I've realized that it's changed and it's shifted, and some parts are stronger and some parts are more quick to be distrusting, right? And some parts don't want to hear it at all. And all of those things are okay, but they shift and they're heavy and they're things that we carry with us. So I'm just naming for us as Black people that, like, while we understand our vengeance is righteous, we also need to be taking care of ourselves in that.
Of course.
Yeah.
But hypertension, heart disease, all these illnesses, and I mean, I have been in the medical field. I believe that it is it has emotional roots, So
Yeah.
everything that happens, you're going to answer for it, regardless. If you do nothing, you look the other way, whatever, you're gonna answer for it.
That's true. That's true. No, I mean, mitochondrial, you know what I'm saying? Like, the way that we do carry our bodies and all of that, that has been passed on from generation to generation. So even if you wanted to be, I would call it passive, but if you wanted to be, docile and, choose love over vengeance, like, your body has no choice in that. The memory of your cells that were created by your mother and your father and their parents and their parents and their parents will not let that not affect you, whether you do something or not. And then for us to choose, evil versus good, or whatever the case may be, I still feel like that's colonization. Just because, like, we've always had these ideas and we have been fed these ideas that if you're not with me, you're against me. And then anything that's against me is the enemy, as opposed to there being some kind of mix. Like when you think of, Santeria and, the Orishas and all of that, like, they talk about a balance. Like, they're, I'm saying, even in Christianity, your God is a loving God. He's da-da-da-da-da, but he's also a vengeful God, and he's a jealous God. Like, until we can figure out that, like, everything doesn't have to be compartmentalized. Like, you can embrace every part of that, the history of it, and maybe if it's just for one day having peace for yourself, well, then that might be that time that you do it. But like, I just don't think like, okay, because my ancestors suffered, I'm going to take the high road and say, I'm not going to be vengeful or whatever. Oh no, I want your family to be cursed. I want them to suffer for everything that they've done. And I'm going to go to church and praise the Lord, you know, if that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't feel like one has to be one or the other, because it doesn't exist. It is an oxymoron. You cannot pick one or the other, because every single one of us is walking around here. All these, you know, all the Caucasians that, you know, especially here in the South, go to church religiously every day and are the most racist people you've ever met in your lives. They can do it. We're doing it. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm sorry.
I love that. I love that point. I love that notion. And I think that is what I'm trying to name for Tommy and our character, right? Is that it's not that he's choosing, it's not docile versus, or not vengeance versus love. I think what we've said this whole time is the love is vengeance, right? When Ms. Johnson is saying people are coming out to avenge the things that have happened to them and to avenge their communities, that's what we're saying, that love is vengeance, but it changes, and it changes you as a person. And those are the ways in which love has to show up, and you have to take care of yourself. It's not that you don't execute in vengeance, but there's a clarity you need to be in. And I'm going to name that I don't think Tommy has it. I don't think he's walking in any kind of clarity. I think this is the first time he's actually allowed himself to see his position in the world after his father has been gone. You know, I want to name that he's not, his vengeance isn't righteous, y'all. Just because he's choosing it and because his daddy's dead. That's emotional and that's real, and we could all have our heart in that, but that don't make it righteous. And I just want us to challenge ourselves and him and Malone and Sudyam and everyone else a little bit more throughout this journey when we talk about what is a righteous sense of vengeance and how do you combat that with love. Love is not soft, right? Love could look like all these other things. Y'all have been super freaking inspirational. We're gonna keep going to the conversation, even though we only have 8 minutes, but I wanna take some time and really just do some mini claps for y'all. I like, this really brings me warmth and joy. And since you're here with me, take yourself off mute. Look at Anna doing the digital clap. Give us some mini claps, because this is so important on a week like this. Black people have found their superpowers, Vika. It's so important for us to sort of be rooted, right? Yes, claps. Look at Journey clapping. Oh, cute. I wanted to also name that Ron in the chat had gave us a wonderful reminder. After next week's book club, you know, we're going to have our last session with the Ballad of Black Tom. But then we're going to be reading Amora, stories by Natalia Borges Polesso. So please, if you need any information on how to get that, make sure you go to the site. And this is a holiday time. You like my Mariah Carey for that? This is a holiday time. And things are tight for folks all around. But whether it's $2, $5, $20, if you got a little hundy lying around the house somewhere, make a donation. Donate. Make this space possible. Ron works really, really hard. Right. I would love everyone to nod and just let's give Ron his acknowledgement. He works so hard, you know? He works so hard to create these spaces digitally. He works hard to grab volunteers for people to join, show up, to make it even possible to pay certain guest speakers or facilitators to come do what they gotta do. Ron. And if you love this space, and if you can find a way during this really difficult time to give us $1 or $2, that would be great. You can click in our chat, the charity.gofundme.com. You also know how to find us on IG. Trust me, if you're trying to give the coin, you're gonna find it, okay? And again, this is a tight time. Don't feel bad. If you can't give it now, you can give $5 in January, maybe 5 to 10 for Paula's birthday. Or, just keep going. And just remember that it's the dedication of space, time, and mostly Ron's time, but any little coin helps. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ron, did I leave something out of that, or that was cool?
No, you did
Great.
good.
So we have, wait, what?
You did good. Thank you.
You're good. So we have 5 minutes, folks.
Hola.
I was like, girl, okay. We have 5 minutes. And
you've grown so much, Paula.
Say it again?
You've grown so much.
Oh, love to hear it, girl, because I was a mess when I was a child. So we read till chapter 12, or we were supposed to read till chapter 12. I'm wondering, are there any predictions for what we're about to see? Any predictions for this story? If you haven't gotten to chapter 12, but you still are like, I have a prediction.
Yeah. Only a prediction, not a, you read it.
Right. Don't
Spoiler alerts.
Yeah, don't rat it out. Don't rat it
Sure.
out. Ms. Johnson had a really good prediction earlier. It could be something like that. Anyone else? Predictions?
So reading the well, I'm listening to the book, and I read a little bit past 12, and so all I want to say is, like, if you haven't listened to the book, if you're reading it from the actual book, there's a voice change from a familiar character, and it sounds like somebody else in the book. So I'm like, oh, so when
what?
When yes. So when you were talking about the shift and change, Paula, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe the book will break it down to where you'll pick it up, but I will be talking about it next week, because the characters and their voices have, been pretty steady. But when I read a little bit past, or listened to a little bit past 12, I was like, wait a minute, who is this talking? So that's gonna be
I'm mad excited. I'm like, damn, I don't have the audio book. I can't wait for you to put it down so I can pick it up, because I have no idea. Like,
okay.
I have no clue.
I'm listening to it also, like in the car back and forth to work. I got up to 12. Does it happen far after 12? I haven't heard it yet.
It happens after.
Oh, snap.
It happens after 12.
That doesn't even make sense, because part 2 is Malone.
Exactly.
I would have expected a shift in voice or character with the Malone section. But if you're saying it happens after that, I'm wondering why.
That's what I'm saying. Vatasha dropping what I call the last folks.
You'll notice something.
You'll notice it. Vatasha, thank you for the gem. Remember, folks, there's nothing but gems in here for an hour and a half. Like,
so now I can't wait till my morning ride.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to listen tonight, Vatasha.
Get it done before Christmas.
Let me do it right now.
So you recommend the audio?
I mean, I
like the audio.
Yeah, because you pick up the accents and stuff, and so like Suriname or how, and also I think the author, the narrator is saying his name in a different way.
Yeah.
But when you hear his accent, you're like, oh, I hate him. Let me just put it like that.
Yeah.
I hate him. So I don't know how he is on the page, but in my voice, his voice is just it's pompous.
The audio is good though. Sometimes I feel like I'm missing stuff though. I feel like, wait, what just happened? Like I find myself having to go back. And
I'm glad it's not just me.
Let me play that back, because what just happened just now, right? It's hard to sometimes follow, right? I mean, I always have the book also, because I read listen. So when I can read it, I read it, or if I'm on that's how I get more reading in, right? When I'm on my way to work or driving somewhere, I listen, but I also have to have the physical book to, if I need to pick it up during another time. But this is one of the first times I'm like, wait, what?
You go back 15 seconds, don't you?
15,
30 seconds.
The little circle, right? Like the 15 seconds, like, wait, what happened? Like, hold on a second, wait.
It's hard to get through it.
Lydia.
It's hard to get through it. Yeah.
No,
I'm like, go back.
But this is one of
Look, I have the book. I have to have both versions too, Lydia.
Yeah, because I'm like, wait a second, but that doesn't usually happen. This is one of the first times I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm at the red light. Wait, what happened? Wait, hold on a second.
I love Lydia. Thank you so much for naming that specifically, because again, here we go. I'm gonna geek out. Everybody, hold on, get your drink, sip it, do what you gotta do. But this idea, thank you, this idea of reading and trying to picture this science fiction story,
right?
Thinking about all the different mediums that we're using to try to tell this story in this picture. It's no longer just reading and kind of what I like to do, which is make up the voices in my head and then say them aloud. And then Stephanie yells at me, stop yelling so loud, because she lives downstairs. But this idea that we're using other forms of media to lend itself, it's kind of magical. Just saying, just naming.
And especially when you know that the narrator gets to actually talk to the author to say, okay, I would think that they're kind of directing them to be like, okay, so this is what I want the character to sound like here versus there. So like they give you the clues that the author intended it to be. So I think
Yes.
that's pretty cool. But
So
yeah, I also get,
foreshadowing's coming out in those voices and those sounds you naming.
But that's not intentionality. Nope, nope, nope. He could have intended it to be, but it doesn't have to be. The question is, what's the difference between that and what's on that page?
I think we've named that we could explore both of those. That's really, really powerful. Folks, you know I love my time with you, okay? I don't even got a bae or nothing. Y'all my bae. Like, this is crazy. I love spending time with y'all. I have such a good time for book club. This is the holiday week. If you observe Christmas or Kwanzaa, I'm not sure if Hanukkah times, I think I may have missed it. I don't know. But I know Kwanzaa and Christmas approaching this week. I send you all so much love, so much joy, a lot of refreshing, reverberating, good high frequency vibes so you can prepare yourself to go into 2021, but most importantly for my birthday. I love y'all so much.